Good afternoon. How are you? Well, Thomas Jefferson today is delivering again. It's 47 degrees here. And the humidity is at 40%, and the wind is 7 miles an hour, all of which is reasonable. The loud sound you hear are my cleats. I'm not prepared to give them up. There's still ice on the ground. It's not always visible. And I don't want to lose a couple of days if I fall on this from walking outside. We did the animals earlier, and in fact we had a whole bunch of pumpkins out there, so they gorged themselves on pumpkins. They have to, when we don't throw them down and break them for them, they have to bite into it. And apparently these pumpkins are the best thing since sliced bread for pigs, because they just go crazy over it. Let's see. Let's talk about interesting family endorsements and the opposite. JFK's daughter, Caroline, called RFK's son, RFK Jr., a predator. Enough said. Think it'll make a difference in the hearings? Well, you know, when you can approve the ones that have been approved, you know, we're in a different place in terms of judging what's reasonable and right and what's good for America and whether they're qualified or not. You know, for some time it has appeared, at least in recent years, that we elect people that you wouldn't hire for a simple office job. And we seem to, I don't know, I pick them because they entertain us in some way. Like the business of government is to give us a good laugh. But the flip side of that notion, and we're seeing it very clearly these days, is that you get people that are totally irresponsible. Don't want to do the dull thing of following the law and the Constitution, want to remake America in the guise of a dictator. And we don't have to rely on me concluding that. We have Trump himself telling us on the first day in office he's going to be a dictator. And he hasn't given up that idea. He's still working at it. Those of you who follow the entertaining stories, the story on the New Jersey drones is, after all that nonsense, apparently the FAA approved some of those drones for research purposes. But we don't know what that research is. When I was a student at Columbia Law, I was the managing editor of the Columbia Human Rights Law Review. And we had a great team of people, and we put together a whole issue on privacy. And in fact, they reported it in Playboy. And so we had a mixed feeling about our serious articles. But to this day, when I hear something like, oh, the FAA approved drones flying around for research, I figure it's an invasion of privacy for some reason or other. Or it's a violation of that we're not supposed to do this kind of stuff domestically. You know, and the government just says, oh, trust us, it's about security. Who knows what it was, what it's for. And it would be nice to know how our tax dollars are being spent. And if they're not telling us about it, as often as not, it's not because it would compromise the program. It's because they don't want the program known publicly because it's susceptible to criticism, shall we say. So I think it's just another example of an invasion of privacy. And it was begun under Biden, you know, and I supported Biden. And it'll probably be continued under Trump, and that's the way that is. As for, you know, who is sidled up to Trump, whom we are surprised by, Snoop Dogg is right up there. And he said he was just fine performing for felon Trump. Well, he can be just fine being ignored by me, not that I'm going to change his economic life. But, you know, people like this, okay, you're an entertainer, but character does matter. And he should pay the price. You did it for whatever reason, and good. I don't accept your explanation. You knew what you were doing when you're getting into it. Maybe you thought you'd get away with it. I don't know. Anyhow, you're off my list. Not that I can affect you much, but I hope others feel the same way. Let's talk about felon Trump's immigration shock troops. They're grabbing U.S. citizens. Are they doing that on purpose? Well, I presume they're doing it because they're as clumsy as everybody else in this band of boobs, and that we can expect errors of constitutional proportion to happen every day, that these people are out there, you know, with their weapons and their right-wing paraphernalia with the names of agencies on their back, and having Dr. Phil go with them, who, by the way, went in Chicago on the raid and reported it, and he was allowed to know about that, but none of the local officials were told about it because they want to sanitize it. These are public, what would you call? Well, for some they're amusement, and for others they keep us in check. And the shock troops are grabbing not just U.S. citizens, but even Native Americans. So think about it. These guys are seizing Native Americans. Why? Because they're not on the reservation? Is there no end to the pitiful abuse of those who were here before we were here? Does it ever end? You know, I've taken to wearing a slight ankle bracelet, if you will, because it reminds me of when I put together beads as a kid in the Boy Scouts. But it's like a daily reminder to me that the least of our brethren, if you will, continue to be assaulted, and the ones more recent that we thought we were improving upon, persons who were black, Hispanic, Latino, persons with sexual preferences that are not shared by everybody, a dissonant affectional preference according to these Republicans, that, you know, on and on. And so these guys are against all of that. But going back to the shock troops, how many C-130s are we going to load up with people after we've dodged the courts and dodged due process? What are we going to start doing? Breaking into the businesses, you know, on Main Street, and writing things on there, you know, we don't like trans, we want, there's only two sexes, you know, whatever kind of nonsense. What Trump is doing is breeding discrimination and pain and hate among the people. You know, let's quote the founder, almost founder of his party, Lincoln. House divided cannot stand. He doesn't want it to stand. He wants it to come down, and he wants to be the surviving autocrat who takes over for that. Meanwhile, it's kind of interesting when Trump is concerned about there being criminals among those who immigrate to the United States. When he released 1,500 people, I think 600 of which were involved in violence. In other words, we actually released criminals, known to be criminals, who were serving sentences, pled guilty, and were tried. We're basically allowing these people to be in the streets. And so what's wrong with that? Well, an Indiana man who was pardoned was killed in a traffic stop. His name was Matthew Huddle. He was 42. And he pleaded guilty. And he was stopped at a traffic stop. He resisted arrest. There was an altercation. He had a gun on him. And he was shot and he was killed. Now, should we be surprised? No. This guy was stamped as bad goods. And apparently he didn't even take heart to the fact that he pleaded guilty. He didn't learn anything from it. Nothing. This is the judgment of Trump. To thoughtlessly just say, let them all be released. All of them. What's the big deal? Now, Hegseth, meanwhile, has rolled back DEI. I think I mentioned that in the post I had. That is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't want any affirmative action for those groups that have been discriminated forever. And it's kind of interesting that when I say forever, apparently we're going back to the Native Americans. And I think what Trump is trying to say is that the jurisdiction of a Native American is a reservation. You can't be a citizen? Whoa. I don't know. We'll see it in the days ahead. But they're sending a clear signal that these are the people that are going to wear armbands that we cast out from our heavenly kingdom, the house on the hill, the place where freedom is, where we have brave and courageous people, yeah? This is not brave and courageous. These are crimes against humanity. Our government is engaged in crimes against humanity, and there's not anybody on the hill saying it. Why don't they wait until they're, as I joked on the air with Ari the other day, when they're on neighboring cots in one of his camps, perhaps in Indiana. Now, here's something else that's interesting. We talk about DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And basically, be sensitive to treating people equally. They don't want people treated equally. And Costco has wholesale supported DEI. They say it even helps business. It helps the morale. It's very good. But there are AGs, attorney generals from 19 states saying courts and businesses have rejected it as illegal. No, they have not rejected it as illegal. And this is the kind of intimidation that they do. What will Costco continue to do? I don't know. But these are test cases. What they're trying to do, in my opinion, is create a swath. There's a word I never use, S-W-A-T-H. A swath of people that they abuse. And people whisper to themselves or unconsciously think, well, it's not me, I'm okay. Well, what could I do? And the answer is, you better do something, because this isn't stopping. These guys just keep going. And then consider the fact that DOJ, the Justice Department, more so than ever, is firing officials, the Attorney General is, acting Attorney General, tied to probes of Trump. Acting Attorney General McHenry said, and I quote, he doesn't trust these officials to assist faithfully to implement the president's agenda. Is that what the Department of Justice is? To implement the president's agenda, which is to show reprisal to those who conducted a full and fair investigation that resulted in indictments of Trump? Is that our definition? Brush off your Orwellian library and check on 1984. The Truth Ministry is in full flower doing this stuff. Now, people get very nervous when you say, oh, this reminds me of Hitler and so forth. And those of us who, as a kid, I read this stuff, because I was fascinated. My uncle was in a prisoner of war camp in World War II, having been part of the troops that landed in Italy from Africa. And when he came home, he was a shadow of himself. But my parents didn't think about having me until after the war was over. Well, basically their commitment in the war was over. And my dad served in World War II, and wherever he could be that my mom could join him, she did. So I take quite personal the fact that we would fight in that war, win it, and my uncle was compromised the rest of his life as a result of having been in that POW camp. And he... you would never know, talking to him, what he went through, except he was proud of his contribution to the safety and security of America from dictators. And so those looking for indications in the past for what's going on in the present might look at the NSV. Now, that was the organization under Hitler, the National Socialist, and I don't remember the German word for V, Volksspeit or something, but and this organization was responsible for welfare. And we hear today that Trump is cutting off funds, basically for the poor and compromised, and has no reassuring words that this will change quickly. And so people are suffering probably already. Well, the NSV government declined, the Nazi government declined and declared that in the future, this is 1930 something, future welfare and charitable aid would be granted only to individuals who were racially superior or of value to the Volksgemeinschaft. My grandmother had a lot of German blood. Ich weiß nicht, was soll es bedeuten, dass ich so traurig bin. Those of you know it's from Goethe. So, what do we have? We have the playbook. Forget 2025. The playbook is Mein Kampf. The playbook is every dictator has ever existed. And Trump is getting even with the world because this midget without a soul, without a care in the world for anyone else, only cares about power. Until he's defeated in the government, he presents a risk to America. He is a craven individual, and if people just think they're going to weather this for 4 years when they see what's happened in a week and a couple of days, forget it. We have to fight this man and his assorted, gloomy adherents who are prepared to destroy America as it is to form a place without freedom or hope or a future, really. At least not as conceived in the Declaration of Independence and not as published in the Constitution, which itself was an imperfect document, but it's ignored in modern times by felon Trump and his adherents. So that's our problem. Talk, think, read, know, and don't think they haven't come for you yet, because I figure journalists may be next, or politicians on the Hill before they become for the people. More visible ones, I assume. And you could always take solace. Oh, they haven't come for me yet. They're not on my doorstep. So that's what I got today, and I'm glad to be out in the Cathedral of Trees. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.